Well, good evening to you and welcome to this program of Walter Rodney Groundings. I'm your host, Ian Abrams, and on today's program with me to talk about current issues in Guyana's political landscape is Brother TACUMA OGUNSEYE. I want to welcome you to the program, Brother TACUMA.
As
Um,
usual, it's a pleasure.
and we've been away for a little while, so we want to tell the audience out there, not that you are not having um, programs, but we're back with you and we're happy to be back. And I guess on behalf of the WPA, Brother Hogan would like to share greetings for the new year.
On the behalf of the Working People's Alliance, the WP, and also on behalf of this program, the Walter Rodney Groundings, we want to extend our best wishes to the nation. Um, at this time, we always wish ourselves, a prosperous and a fruitful new year.
Okay.
But the indications are that the new year may be a year of struggle. Um, we have survived the last year, and I think that from all indications, um, the new year will be a year of important struggle in the country. And I think we want to say that as a party, the WP, and in this program, we're prepared to pull our weight, and we hope that we could build wider consensus in the country to make the new year a meaningful year, both politically, economically, and socially for the people of the country.
Yeah, indeed. I would say that, I mean, the end of the year was really on a bad note. It ended on a bad note. So we're entering the new year in a kind of perilous mode, and I am hopeful that I mean, it's disgusting, but as you were saying, it's going to be a year of struggle, and the struggle can only be won if people are willing to come out and be forceful in their demands for the kind of change and uh, the kind of representation we need. We've seen, well, we will talk about it later on, but people, you have to be prepared. It's not a fight that we can take lightly. We see that evidently that despite what you are saying, that those who are in authority believe that they have a right to go down a perilous road. And so, greetings for the new year to one and all. And
I also want to extend a special greetings to our faithful viewers.
yeah, the ones who we
Apart from the
call.
general,
Mhm.
our faithful viewers, there have been people who have stuck with us for many, many years. And they have been our inspiration because every time they don't see us on the air or see us on the road, they always express,
Yes.
some concern, and they call us and so forth. So to them, we're very grateful because you're a big inspiration in what we do.
All right. Well, one of the things that we have to be talking about today is the passing of Professor Joycelyn Long. Um, I think, Brother Ogun, you as a member of the, well, AGDA and so on, and one who would have been in the Pan Africanist arena for quite a while, going back to the days of Askri and all of that, how would you view the passing of Professor Long, Joycelyn Long?
I mean, it is a great loss to the African community and the nation as a whole, and the local and international, regional, international Pan African movement. Um, Professor Long was very devoted in her commitment to build the Pan African movement branch in Guyana, and she maintained the connection between the local branch and the regional and the international body, and make sure that there has been almost for many decades an unbreakable link between the local Pan-African branch and the international. Um, her loss is a tremendous loss, because the society is not producing people, younger people, as readily
with
as
that
one
kind of commitment.
with that kind of commitment that we will hope, because at the end of the day, the torch have to pass on to the younger generation. But that level of commitment, I remember for many years, she lives in Kiddy, and I also live in Kiddy for many years. I grew up in Kiddy. And ironically, she and I has been, and in fact, she more than I, because even when I stopped, she continued.
Okay.
In our African wear.
Okay.
At one time, if you were to look in the Borno recognition book, Borno produces a recognition book of WPA persons, and one of the notes in the book, when they refer to me, you always got on a dishiki.
Okay.
Which is true. I for many years I have to ask have declared the cultural revolution, and so using the African attire was very important to us. And I remember, in the community it was me and she, Jocelyn, but she was consistent. She never break till she dying day. Many of us, retreat eventually. This is something normal, kind of wear, but not that sister. That sister was consistent in her conviction. She had a tremendous conviction. But one of the unique things about her, activism, and I read recently when she even described the Pan-African movement in Guyana. She did, the exact words I may be missing, but she described it as a very silent movement. The point is, she herself wasn't very vocal, but she was consistent and deliberate with her line of march. And I think that characteristic, had a major imprint on the development of the Pan-African movement branch in Guyana of the last years. Not too much noise, but consistent work.
Yes.
Yeah.
Consistent. But she always, on our connection to CPAN, the Caribbean Pan-African movement. Dr. Cambon and the Barbadian guy, fair-skinned chap, whom I met in St. Vincent on a conference that I was sent to by the Pan-African movement, Commission, David Commission, and so on. But she would always be in contact with CPAN and the Caribbean, and you said the international movement.
She also maintained contact in Africa.
And so on. I was speaking to Tom Dalgetty the other day, and he was saying that one of the things about that was that she was so in touch that conferences all across the world she was aware of. And even though the movement might not have had the money, any member who had the means to get there, once you got there, she made it so easy for you that once you got to the airport, somebody was there to pick you up. They took you where you were to stay, and they took care of you. Yeah. And that was on the basis of their respect
for her,
for Dr. Long. You understand?
She have earned a tremendous reputation in the Pan-African world.
Right. And even locally, every 2 years we have the Pan-African biennial conference, and she would bring international people to speak to the issues of Pan-Africanism and so on. And it really would be enlightening to those of us who are growing in the movement. And it's really, like you said, a tremendous loss that she has passed on. The movement itself, I know, is now struggling to come to grips with her loss, and is seeking to maintain in her, memory, the kind of activism that she would have had. And I'm hopeful that, that can continue to grow, and it will be something that, can be held in her memory. There are discussions, hopefully, in ways of commemorating her passing in a lasting way. And those things, I think, are going to be worked out so that Professor Long will always be remembered. The University of Guyana recently, on Thursday, had a virtual session on the memory of Dr. Long. And even there, the outpouring of love and affection. It was really striking. But she was more than a Pan-Africanist.
Yeah.
Ogun,
Outstanding educationalist,
yeah,
cultural activist,
in particular. I mean, she was really and she was grounded in the politics of Guyana and had a deep concern for the African people in Guyana. I mean, I would be called regularly by her, and whenever events are taking place, and she was always, the tone of her voice was one of worry. What is really happening to us here in this country, Brother AB? We have to, we can't give up. She was always urging you to fight,
keep going.
keep the fight, she was persistent in that regard. That we got to fight. We can't just let it go that way. I don't know, but people like her are
hard to replace.
yeah, and difficult to replace. The other aspect of her that I know, and it was raised at UG, that she contributed to many new things at the University of Guyana. In fact, I was part of her first group of students in the music education arena where she started a music certificate in music in the Faculty of Arts. At the time, Derek Bernard was the dean of the faculty. And she made it so that people who might not have had, because the university allows for what they call people who might not have the academic qualifications, but they're mature students, and they can enter. And she would go to the police, Guyana police force. She would go to and recruit, because the focus was not only on the musical scripting and so on, but our focus was primarily on Pan, right? That told of our Caribbeanness and our love for things Caribbean. And so she recruited policemen. She went to all the Pan yards. She went to Charlotte Street. They had the what they call Bitcoin invaders, and then she recruited from all across the spectrum and got those guys to go to the university. Because one of the things about Pan is that Pan men play by ear. And we have stories that are, while we were there at UG doing the course, I did that after I completed the degree. It started in 1994, I think, just after I completed my first degree. And the joke was, one of the jokes that the guys often spoke about was one of the leaders of the Guyana Police Force Band who went to Suriname on some kind of exchange. And he was so prolific, he jumped on the drums, he played, he went on this instrument, he played, and when the bandmaster from Suriname came and gave him a score with what they were supposed to play, he was all at sea because
he was being expected of him. He didn't answer the question. So it's because like a student who write a lot but didn't answer the question.
And so she recognized that, even though Pan, the tradition was that you learned it by
ear.
Yeah, and you played by ear, that we needed to move forward beyond that. And so we were possibly the first set of people who had score sheets in front of us playing Pan. And Senior Superintendent Baville at the time was our instructor and the bandmaster. And we had our score sheets and we were playing by that. And a lot of the guys who came out of that program, they are teachers now, teaching Pan at Queen's College, Bishops, and all these places. But hadn't they gotten that opportunity to qualify themselves, they would not have been able to enter the arena. They would have had the knowledge, the skill, but being certified, they would not have been. And even after that, one of the things that once she recognized the quality in you, that she pushed you. And after we completed that program, she recruited me to teach, I taught 2 years of the history of Caribbean music because she focused on music of the Caribbean. She focused on the history of the Caribbean music. She talked about zouk, kassav, and all the other kinds of reggae and all of these things. So you had a wide knowledge of Caribbean music and even music beyond,
Yeah.
you know, and even the movements, like the 1892 the Baptist spiritual Baptist movement and so on in Trinidad and all of these things. So it was an experience for us,
Yeah.
right? And it really put a stamp on steel band music in Guyana. And even then, our white connection was displayed because she brought people like Professor Hollis Liverpool, Mike Chalk Dust. She brought some of the stalwarts in music to come to the university and to have discussions with us about music. And when you left that program, you were really enlightened.
Like,
Really, really enlightened. So she was a person to the core who understood what was needed for people in the country. The other thing is, I mean, only about 2 years ago, no, a year and a half or so, she got a university again to run a program in Akan.
okay.
And the thing with Professor Long, once she starts at those programs, you cannot not go. I mean, because she would call you, AB, you know, we're running a course in Akan, and you have to be on. You can't say no. You can't say no.
Yeah.
Right? So even though she was French, primarily a lecturer in French and so on, she saw this African connection as absolutely important.
Yeah.
Right? And so Akan was taught.
Yeah.
We did that program. So Professor Long is really striking. She was a marvelous personality, simple, humble. I don't know, I mean, if I ever heard her spoke above a whisper.
Yes.
Yeah, so she was that kind of person. Apart from that, too, the recognition must be given to her as one of our icons in music as a pianist. I don't know if you ever heard Professor Long play the piano.
No, I never had the opportunity, but I've heard about her repetition. But
Man, she is amazing. Amazing as a performer. I mean, and she was a concert pianist of no mean repute. Right? And she practiced and she played. I was looking at a few pieces that the University of Guyana were able to get and to show on their Zoom meeting, their commemoration of her life. But I would hope that, you know, if we can get a collection of our performances, just spend maybe an hour program or so just having her perform. I mean, I mean, even in our old age, the dexterity, you know what I mean, or the fluidity in her play with her fingers and so on, it was still amazing. I could imagine when she was younger, what would it have been. And so maybe if we, I don't know if across the world, because she didn't only play in Guyana, but she played internationally also. If we can really begin to get a collection of our performances and to keep that for generations to see. One of the things about, I mean, I'm talking a whole lot, I'm the host here.
no, but we're the nature of our program is we don't have a strict host visitor arrangement. But you know her greater, much more than I. In her many manifestations.
In many ways. You know, the thing is, I was going to say that one of the indictments on the PPP government is that the NCN And then you had the Guyana Broadcasting Corporation, GBC and GBS and Radio Demerara and those places. They had archives of uh, whatever was done, cultural activities, dating way back to the 60s and 70s and all of these things. And because the PPP is on a move to rewrite the history of this country, a lot of those things that were recorded and stored in those libraries, they basically had them destroyed. So we have lost tons of valuable information.
Cultural information.
Even the library at NCN, they shut it down. And so access to maybe valuable performances by Dr. Lunk and Ray Locke and all of these people who would have come here, we don't, they left them in the rain to be destroyed, what they dumped. It's really, one friend was telling me that during the 70s, they could have identified all the cultural groups across Guyana, so that if they wanted to go to Carifesta, that they could say, and they wanted a particular kind of act, they could say, okay, let's go to Region 9 and get the Amerindian group so, or get. And they had recordings of all the performances of all of those groups and so on. And they destroyed all of that. I don't know, I heard a documentary once on the radio talking about the history and development of the Guyana's national anthem, with how it evolved. You had Potter, Rodway, and the others, who basically, you had 3 songs that were scripted to the words of the national anthem, all right? And when you listen to that, you had a good sense of the history, because if you put the national anthem with, I can't remember the other two, but the phrasing and everything, they can fit into it, because after Potter, Rodway, and the other guy, the Ari Luca, I think, who had done the musical scores, and then they chose the Potter's version. Then they told the others to write lyrics to suit the scores that they had written. So those 2 scores were basically scores for the Guyana national anthem, but the words that were written for them, because the winning piece was Potter's piece, the other 2 wrote scores for them, so that if you put those 2 versions with the national anthem, they can also be sung. Right? But I don't know where you can find that again. I mean, I listened to that as a young man a couple of years ago, but if you ask now, where it is, and those are valuable things that happen now. So the National Culture Center might have recorded performances of Dr. Lunk and all of those things, but everything, history, once it was not related to the PPP, is no history in Guyana.
Even the cultural barbarians.
Yeah, it's sad.
But before we go off, or people have been asking when is the funeral. I don't know if you have any information.
On the program at the university, the nephew Paul said that the funeral will be on the 5th.
On the 5th?
At the Brickdam Cathedral.
Okay. What time?
I think it's viewing is from, tributes are from 1 or something, and the service may be from 2, if I'm correct. But I can always get that verified. But it's definitely on Wednesday the 5th at the Brickdam Cathedral, and so. And even this afternoon, as we speak here, the Pan-African movement is having a session on the Pan-Af Gardens, on the Merriman Mall. And you know, she too also fought for us to have that stretch of ground. And even as we were going through the process of developing it, we've been facing many challenges, attempts to take it away, attempts to have us rent a piece to other agents and all kinds of things. But she was pretty firm in our position that, yeah, I mean, down the road, the other people have their bit, and this is ours, and we have to preserve it as that. And and the education that she provided to us through, I mean, in many ways, Dr. Long, apart from being a culture bearer, she always sought to have people understand their history and to place them in a context where they could better understand themselves. And so the Panaf Gardens became the ground for education. And the last Sunday in every month, we would have the open air get together where she would have different topics discussed by people who had the knowledge on a wide range of issues pertaining to Africa, the Caribbean, Guyana, and so on. And so people who got there were always educated and enlightened. My only regret with those things would be that, in many of these African activities, you find that the people who are attending are sometimes basically one group that is moving from one activity to another by another organization. I don't know why it is that we're not galvanizing the society in a wider sense so that more people are recognizing the need for understanding their Africanness and embracing it, and being really, I mean, you as a Pan-Africanist, you are a man who talked a lot about the need for what you call the cultural oh boy, having an outlook that is African, right? African worldview, right? And that is what she really tried to instill in us, so that you have an understanding of Africa. And one of the things that she would decry is, this position that the world continues to push through the international media about Africa as a backward place. And through education, you understand that a lot of the messages that are being peddled about around the world, that actually those are not the reality in Africa, right? So Doc is going to be missed, and we have to find ways of remembering her so that she will always be in the minds of the Guyanese people in one way or another. I don't know if you have any other.
No, we spent quite a lot of time on it, except to, press our faithful disciples like yourself and others that the most fitting tribute is to continue the Pan-African movement in Guyana so that it will have a kind of everlasting presence. We have to have that kind of conviction. When our martyrs pass, we have to use it as an opportunity to restate our conviction.
Well, let's hope that, and she was the last of the three of the Long family. Yeah, passing in quick succession. So I want to extend condolences to the nephew, Paul, and hope that he has the strength to. He himself is a musician. His father played the violin, and he also did. And his sister Yvonne also played the piano. So the Long family.
It's a family of music.
A family of music.
And academia.
Right. All right, so farewell to Dr. Long, Professor Long, right? We also have, I mean, Guyana is going through so much turmoil. The most recent development is the struggle, the fight by the PPP to pass this oil and gas bill, which is seeking to give them control of how to appropriate and to spend the monies that are going to be garnered from oil that have already begun to be garnered. I mean, they have spent so much, billions of dollars already borrowed and expended in all kinds of ways. And they viewed that as a means of already dipping into the oil fund. But what prevented them was the act of 2019 by the APNU administration. And so they have sought to have that change. It was challenged in Parliament. I don't know how you see those developments.
Okay, first, I want to say that I fully support the actions of the parliamentarians that they try to disrupt the parliament. I note a comment in Starbuck News the day after, which was negative, was trying to pose, the actions of the parliamentarians in a very negative way.
Okay.
And was saying it's unparliamentary and so forth.
What do they know about all parliament?
Parliamentary. They should see the British Parliament or the South African Parliament.
I was on the, because Duncan and the others were, because they were blowing whistles and I said, and then they shielded Ashley Singer. I saying they can only shield him because y'all are allowing him to. Because for me, punches should have started right away in there.
Yeah, Parliament is a place where
people fight.
Because if you got deep conviction about what is going on,
it's serious business you're talking
it's serious
about.
business, it's life and death business for generations.
So when they took that action, I was on the ball with it. So Starbuck News got to take a hiatus.
They're just wrong. But you can't compare the actions of the parliamentarians can be equate with the skullduggery that is being done by the government. I mean, it's two uncomparable things. I mean, in many countries, I don't want to use the program to say it, but in many countries, this is such an important action and important for the country that the opposition in the country would be up in arms. So what the parliamentarians did is mild in terms of what is necessary to push the PPP to some, realization that the country doesn't belong to them, and this all money doesn't belong to them. So I disagree with Starbuck News, and I want to put it on the record. This program, we disagree with them. We feel that the parliamentarians did, what they probably feel within the context of parliamentary culture, allow them to do. And I think we have to apply them. Don't worry with those who want a parliament that has no conviction. Mm-hmm. Parliamentarians have to have conviction. If you really believe,
to fight
with and even die for the conviction. Parliament is not a place where you go just collect money and you represent yourself. You're representing people. You're representing generations to come. So I disagree. I think that we have to, on the program we had started to do it, we have to continue to do it, is that we have to make, because the government and the PP and Jagdeo and company clearly understand what is at stake here. Guyana is on the verge with our oil and gas potential to be one of the richest countries in the world for population. The amount of wealth and money that we're talking about in the next 5 years or so, when oil production is ready to ramp up, Guyana will be producing more oil per day than the population. Yeah. And if you were to, develop a perception of that kind of wealth at $50 or $60 a barrel, you're talking about tremendous money that you can't even count. So this is what is at stake, and the PPP is very clear. They understand what is at stake. And it's our duty to let the nation understand what is at stake, because a lot of Guyanese haven't fully understand what is at stake. They still believe in that Guyana is a poor country. Guyana, as we stand, is a rich country. And what the PUP has done with the bill is to create a condition to expropriate the wealth of the people, okay, so that they could use it as they feel please. And it is, I noticed in Kaishur News today, they raised the point that they put legal punishment for people who rig elections in the draft bill, but they don't put no legal punishment for people who steal the money.
And even though they're saying the article is saying that they're following the Ghanaian model.
Yeah, model and all that.
But in the Ghanaian model, you get 15 years and all of that. And they have no penalties, but they want life and
death for electoral offenses. You know, I mean, it just shows the mindset. You know, and I'm saying that what we're faced with. I mean, I try to. I penned a letter. I noticed Kaishua carried a letter today, and I think Village Voice carried on the online version. But I basically, you know, made the point that look, the last year, 2021, in my view, you know, is a very important year that will shape what happened in Guyana from here onwards. PPP have done in the latter part of last year 3 very significant things. Okay, they have published the proposed electoral reform bill, and we don't have to spend much on the details because everybody know what direction they're going. They have seized control of GCOM, you know, basically, you know, by putting a very partisan person with the combination with the chair, and now the season, you know, the assets of the country, the oil assets, you know, the way in which they structure the national resource fund bill. So they're gone with the elections, and now they're gone with the resources. Now, in political terms, that leave the rest of us, you know, as a nation, you know, in a serious predicament. And we have to make up our minds as a country whether there's any red, you know, there must be some red lines. A nation has to develop red lines where you tell your leaders, you can't cross, man. And if I want you to reach this line, we push back regardless of our political views. And I think that we reach a point in this country that we have to fight for that kind of consensus. You know, because if we don't, I'm telling you, if we don't, we're going to get the worst of the oil course. You see, it is not only the National Resource Fund bill that is at issue here, is that once we don't put order and strict legality and develop the political environment to constrain political people and people operating in the oil sector, okay, from engaging in corrupt behavior. I'm telling you, those multinational Exxon and all the multinational companies, they're going to corrupt them and find ways of siphoning off millions of dollars into the private accounts. Yeah, but more worse than that, you know, if we don't have if we don't resolve some of our political problems and have some level of unity as we move forward in this new context of richness and money, what people going to do? They're going to finance private armies. You see, we complained about in 2002 and 2005 with the drug lords and all that developed in the fight for turf and all kind of thing. They're going to be smoke. They're going to be smoke to what we're setting up ourselves up for. We're setting up ourselves for fire. And I'm very concerned because I think, you know, the formal politics with the parties, civil society, the trade unions, and everybody, we have to take control of this process in this country. If we don't take control and insist, that there is order, there is transparency, there is fairness, this oil could create some of the worst situation in the country, even though it has the potential to make us a very rich and prosperous country.
Yeah, but I mean, the concern is, while we are deliberating on the actions of the opposition parliamentarians, the Tabrook News seem to have missed what the PPP has done in relation to the bill, not only in the legal sense, but in terms of their basically going against the law to have the president assent to the bill. First, we heard them in their press conference after the parliament session saying that, well, look, the bill was passed because at the time before Ferguson got to the mace, all the parliamentarians were in place and the vote was put and all of these things, and that the vote was already taken before the mace was removed. Subsequent to that, now we're hearing the Speaker of the House saying that the motion was passed because they had another mace that they use, and it's not unconventional to have, because they built that mace, a smaller mace that they use. So the contradiction is there. So obviously they're lying about the situation, because I heard Roysdale after the session saying that the bill cannot be passed because the law says that all the parliamentarians must be seated and all of these things. The Prime Minister was on his feet and all of these things were taking place, and so they could not have voted. So they came up with this scheme now to say that the conditions were there for the bill to be passed, but it could not be. And this is an excess. Why is it that they are so, stringent and so eager to pass something that is of such great concern and is creating such division in the society? What is pushing them ahead?
Greed and power, money, the amount of money that we talk about, they will corrupt this entire country. If the PPP get its own way on this matter, I'm telling you, in practical politics, given the smallness of our country, given the vastness of the money, they will corrupt every section of this, go from judiciary to police to army, to every section, dragging them will corrupt. And they make a mockery of democracy. They will democracy in Guyana. We will be run as a mafia state, the criminalization of the state that we were talking about, which Clive Thomas define and illustrate. It's going to raise its head in a more vicious way, because now they have money, to achieve the objective. That is why this, for me, is a defining moment in the country. And I don't really care whether the bill passed legally or it didn't pass legally. It should be, we have to stop it. We have to stop the implementation, of the measures of the bill by having, some very firm, effective response. Because if we don't, I'm telling you, we're not going to pull this back 5 years from now or 2 years from now. You have to stop it now. You see, I have been paying very careful and keen attention to the ongoing dynamics in the country. And my whole sense is that a lot of people who was supporting the PPP now become disgusted with them. A lot of the people who jump on the PPP bandwagon and still get disgusted with them. And I don't want us to go back too much and harken on the elections and who took what position on the elections. I think we have to build a movement, a people's movement, a movement that have the people's interests at the forefront. And you can, and what the single significant aspect, okay, of the people's interest in Guyana is the oil fund and the oil money and the oil wealth. And we have to build up a consensus around the oil wealth, okay, and to unite people of similar mind, political parties, trade unions, civic society forces, letter writer, columnists, everybody who have a commitment, to national decency, and who have a commitment to see that the oil money, okay, serve the interests of this generation and future generation. So we want to build a mass movement, okay, in defense of the national patrimony, based upon oil and as the catalyst, and it should cut across party lines. It should be so flexible, and even if half people in the PPP have a change of mind on the particular issue, they should be welcome to the struggle. We really need a genuine national struggle on at least one issue. This issue, to my mind, is a decisive issue. And I've been looking at the situation in the context of the pandemic and everything. And as I said on this program over and over, that my own political judgment is clouded by the reality of the pandemic, in the sense that you as a political practitioner, you want to sense where people stand at a given moment in the political process. And I can't honestly say that I could make a proper judgment of where people stand in the context and in the pandemic reality. And I would propose that, look, in politics and struggle, we have to work with people and to fight with them where they are, and we have to, those of us who are practitioners, we have to create an environment and a situation and a line of march that is likely to find acceptance to people, and they could actually participate effectively in it. And in the context of the pandemic, we have been trying to get people to muster in the streets, which I don't think it seems to be working, because I think the bulk of the population, I think, really ready for that. But I think in this particular struggle, what we should try to do is to have a day of national protest where we call on Guyanese to stay home. So you're not flying out in the face of the pandemic, you're staying home. We ain't going to work, we ain't going to business, and we close down the country. I think nothing less than that. We have to signal to these, to the PPP and these political gangsters that this country, okay, despite our divisions, whether they're political, whether they're social, whether they're ethnic, okay, we still have some semblance of nationhood. And on one or two issues, we draw the line in the sand. And I think this is the issue. We should draw the line in the sand. And we should work to close down the country. Make that clear statement to them in the world. I hear people talking about mobilizing, kind of fighting in the outer world and international thing. But the international people are quietly, even if they confront you with it because of a little respect and they want to be a little decent and civil, they look at what you're doing. And if your response doesn't match the task, then you also compromise them, because they can't put more pressure on the government than you prepare to push on your own government. So even if we're to get external and international regional support for the cause, we have to make a clear statement on this matter. We have to close the country down in protest.
I hear your point, Brother Ogun, but in light of the fact that the private sector is aligned to the PPP, you're saying that we have to draw the line in the sand. realistic is that call in the face of private sector that is majorly, you know, aligned to the PPP and that has demonstrated its willingness to follow the PPP in whatever way it chooses.
No, you see, I'm a political practitioner, and I have to, you know, to take cognizance of everything around us.
Mm-hmm.
And the private sector have come out in action that the government, you know, withheld the bill for more consultation. Okay, so they have break rank up to that point. Now, our duty is not to get ourselves too caught up with their previous behavior. In this new initiative, we have to force private sector, PPP members, even PPP parliamentarians to develop a wider vision and a more long-term, you know, commitment to country. Because at the end of the day, the private sector can't sit comfortably if this place get unruly and ungovernable. I said I'm worried because it is the same for me. It is the same kinds of pressures I'm feeling. When the Shadi came to power in '92 and they start a politics of aggression to the African community, when they start to use ballistic metals on nurses who protesting and so, shooting people with pellets and so, police excesses, you know, shooting the African lumping, you know, it was part of their whole, you know, their own psyche of applying pressure and to restrain, you know, African behavior, political behavior, you know, to show that the PPP is bad and strong and, you know. And I began to feel from the African masses and young men that there's going to be a point where people are going to fight back. And, you know, I try my best, officially and unofficially, to draw to important players in the society that, look, if formal politics don't take control, okay, this matter is going to be dealt with by people who's outside formal politics, and we will have no control, and we see what happened. We saw what happened. I'm feeling the same way, in even a greater way. I'm getting great sense at this historical moment. If Guyanese of like mind, people who say they're patriotic, who committed to the country, don't come out and attempt to put the brakes on this, we're going to have a situation where non-formal political forces, okay, going to take over. And we're going to get gang warfare, and we're going to get people fighting for territory because money is going to be involved. And weapons and so going to come in. The people abroad going to produce the weapons, provide the weapons. And the incentive to fight over the wealth is greater than we ever had. And I am very concerned that if we, this, you know, this present set of political, social, civil society actors, if collectively we don't understand what is it we're facing, and we don't put aside some of our differences and act in the interest of the country, then we all going to perish. You know, and that is why I feel it is better to fight now than have to fight when the PPP is re-entrenched and and they got the full already, control, all kinds of institutions. So I know what the private sector is about, but I also know as a political practitioner that their interest is self-interest, and their self-interest must be stakes based upon security. And if the PPP continue a reckless policy, they can't make money. They can't guarantee that their properties, will not run into trouble. So it is that dynamic. I'm hopeful that they're sensible enough, and that realization will make them able to say, look, PPP, on this matter, given the response of the rest of the country, you're going too far. Back off.
One of the things, because I was on David's 101 program the other night, and he raised the question of violence, and I said, that I am not against violence, but the question is, it seems to be that every time you talk about a violent struggle, that the question of race and the context of ethnic clashes come into vogue. Does it necessarily have to be that?
Well, I don't know what different people means different things when they talk about violence.
Well, that's what that's
You
the
understand?
context that I was
You know,
coming to. Because
I'm not
the
too
parliamentary thing could
it-
be considered
Well,
violence.
so it depends upon
What you're talking about.
what you're talking about.
Yeah. So you never gave me the chance to clarify what I was going
talking
to say.
about. You see,
Yeah.
I think in any society, you don't want people to be shooting at one another, burning buildings and all kinds of things willy nilly. Okay, so we're not talking at this stage. We're not talking about that. At least here on Groundings.
Definitely.
Right? But at the same time, we can't be timid to violence because the state don't use violence.
They have already begun to use
And we can't be timid to it. We can't allow, ourselves to getting a framework that if violence is unleashed upon us,
that we're going to sit back
we're going to sit down and take it.
on.
We have to develop capacity to respond. But the issue here is not violence. The issue here is to develop a consensus among the majority of Guyanese. And I think a lot of PP supporters are concerned. But you have to create a political atmosphere for them to express the concern. And that is why I am saying this is at this moment, this is not a struggle to remove the PP from government. This is a struggle to stop them, from implementing laws and measures to allow them to do the like with the money. Okay, that's the struggle. The election thing, who in government have already been resolved. They're in government, but this struggle here is to defend the island wealth of this country and to make sure that we have measures, that will restrain the PPP, the APMU, the coalition, any other political force that happen to get governmental power. So that is the struggle. Now, if the PPP along the road want to make it a do and die struggle, because politics is a dynamic thing. You in government, if you see a great amount of your people is against a measure, sensible politicians will always backtrack and say, okay, we see it in India with the Indian farmers. The Indian government was hell-bent to go down a road. The Indian farmers stuck to the guns, and the Indian government said, okay, we have to backtrack and recall the bill. No, that's not. That is normal in politics. And we have to let the people know that because the president has signed assent to the bill, that we are accepting it. You have to create a political situation to make him, retract the bill. Okay? And this is not a struggle to throw them out of government. This is a struggle to make them respect, the will of the Guyanese people as it relates to this most important national resource. Now, if they want to make it a do and die battle over the government, that is their choice. They got that is their just not we concerned now. We concern must be now to get the largest amount of solidarity among Guyanese people, who are committed to this country, who have a sense of decency, to say to the PPP, you cross the line. And I'm saying if we can't establish the line, we doom. And I bring into bear over 50 years of political experience and judgment on this matter. This is the point in time. Stop it, or we will be destroyed, by it. We got no other, there's no other way out. There's no other way out. If I tell you this other, I'll be lying to you. And I've been thinking about this hard and long, because I knew that the people are going to do exactly what they did. We deal with them for long enough. And I've been thinking about this thing for quite a while. That this here, the oil, could make or break me.
Well, I'm hoping that your optimism can be realized, because I am really passionate about the bill itself, and I'm really mad that they can find ways of, defying the parliament to have a finale signed into law, something that the parliament really did not legally approve. It just flies in the face of everything that our constitution represents, that the talk about democracy represents, and we have to begin to throw that word out because it really makes no sense in the context of Guyana. And so the fight has to be one that, I mean, for me, it has to go down a road of making them understand that enough is enough, right? And like you said, if we can get a consensus, it will be absolutely great. But if we can't, then we have to keep that fight going. And I don't want it to go down a road where, like you were saying, that there are conflagrations in Regent Street and all of that. But we've had situations in Guyana where Regent Street, we had about 3-4 months where every time you hear the people come in, that the store owners lock up and they're gone and people gone. If it got to come to that to bring them to their senses, we got to do it. Because we cannot allow. I mean, no store was burned or anything, but the action of the people drove a movement that told them that, look, this is not acceptable. And we have to bring out the masses to get them to that level again. And that is why I was happy about what took place in Parliament, because, I mean, for me, there seems to be, with the election, the PNC's election and so on, a new kind of feeling of vigor and a re-emergence of a willingness to fight. And we got to keep that momentum going.
Yeah, we got to widen the struggle beyond the PNC.
Yeah.
You see, because,
Definitely.
you see, strategically, we have to be able to get Indian involvement in this struggle.
Certainly.
You see, we have to make the PPP begin to feel that even though the Indian people vote for them,
that they themselves,
but they themselves have a sense of their own long-term interest, okay, that the PPP is flying in the face, you know. It will make matters much easier in Guyana, and it will, you know, reduce the amount of pain
that
as a nation that we have to go through. And I think this is the last chance for that. And this is the last chance. And we got to try as a nation, give it our best shot.
So we got to call on the Indian brothers and sisters to understand. We have a few of them who were on the bandwagon of the PPP, as you said, but they have begun to speak out, and they should be the ones to help to galvanize others. And we hope that with their outpouring of concern and exposing the nefarious behavior of the PPP, and that a wider section of that population.
You know, I want to say something which I've been, you know, trying to weigh when to say it. You know, it deals with my own public activism and how I deal with the Indian community. You know, we came out of the WPA, you know, birth was ASCRI and IPRA, multiracial, you know. IPRA was the Indian organization, ASCRI African organization, then we had the Ratoon, and we have other things, okay? And our politics was multiracial, and we defined it in a certain way. And Walter came and add to that, and we had achieved, okay, a significant inroads into, you know, all the ethnic communities, and in the civil rebellion we built up a kind of consensus about democracy and race and so. After Walter's death, okay, the other forces came and, you know, looking at Guyana, and in terms of, because the activism of WPA and Rodney was not an electoral activism. It was an activism that takes, the position that elections can resolve the problem. Therefore, the problem have to resolve outside the electoral struggle. Now, after Walter died in '92, when we get back, we win fair and free election back, Carter involvement and so on. In that period, other forces like Rafidev, his thing, came on into prominence, and Rafi then began to argue that the WPA conception of multiracial politics doesn't represent.
We only got a couple. You want us to?
How much minutes we got? Let me see.
I was signaled 2 minutes.
But 2 minutes.
2 minutes.
Okay, but
gone.
okay. Sorry, we'll continue this discourse
Yeah,
in the next thing, because I want to make an important statement.
Yeah, the Ravidev thing. I knew
want
you
to
would
make
have come to that.
No, but
right.
it's not so much Ravidev. It's about my own position on how we deal, how I will engage the Indian community.
All right, Brother Ogun, I want to thank you for being on the program. And we do have a struggle on our hands, and we call on the Indian community to recognize the importance of what the PPP is about, and that they, like you said, should begin to let their voices be heard against this atrocity that has taken place. We haven't done so, but I want to congratulate Aubrey on his ascension to the leadership of the PNCR, and I hope that he brings new life and vigor into the party, and that his mouthing of changing the nature of that party will be put into reality. All right? To the viewers out there, it's been good being with you once again, and we look forward to being with you next week. I'll have to remember to have one continuous point, but do enjoy the rest of the evening. Have a happy new year, and we will have a fight down the road. Do have a good night.